When we talk about the smart cities thing, it's a very hi-fi concept, and when you look at its building or construction, we can see even the basic infrastructure in India has not been taken care of. Just like you said that we don't have public facilities in place, we have lack of electricity also, and not very good quality of water supply, and we have the traffic jams, just like you said. So these are some of the basic problems that India has not been able to solve, right? And we have our own set of problems like slums also, and the garbage problem. You must have seen a lot of garbage problem in India. So it's like we have already our own set of problems which we have not been able to solve. And by smart cities thing, we are creating our next target, which is so amazingly huge. And so it's like we are not being able to get the basics right, and we are trying to do something that is even more advanced. Like we cannot solve a 10th class question, and we are dreaming of an admission in probably the MIT or the Harvard. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think it's important to set the bar high, in my opinion. I think that there needs to be ambition when you're looking at public policy, and I think that's. The whole world is moving towards a more planned approach when it comes to cities. I don't think the ancient old of just piecing things together is going to compute anymore. And I don't think it's a problem that's particularly isolated to India either. I think it's all over the developing world that this is something that's happening. I think the problems that India faces have happened not even just because of bad planning, but just because of the rate of change and the acceleration of change. It's happened so quickly. The changes that have happened in India over the last kind of 50 years to 100 years happened over Europe over the span of 400 or 500 years. And so India is is struggling, and a lot of other countries like Thailand or China are struggling to cope with the levels of pollution, the levels of traffic, the levels of people, because of the higher quality of medical care, the higher quality of living, and the higher access to cheap and fast energy. So I think that to come back, I suppose, I think that India needs to aim higher, and I think that the more basic amenities should be dealt with primarily, obviously, but within that scope of looking forward, because I think that there are. If you were to look at the basics again and just supply the basics, then maybe there are things that could be missed that could be done in a better way. And then all you have to do is just patch over it again in another 20 or 30 years when that initial investment stops working, in my opinion. And the whole world is shifting towards an investment in clean energy, which is a big part of it. And there's a huge business there which India can capitalise on, I think, rather well. So I think they should be focusing on that, in my opinion.
Okay. When we take on the smart cities, the 100 smart cities, do you feel that the rest of cities might remain like what we don't have another word, but we can call it dumb cities? Or because in the whole of the India needs development, that if you just focus on the 100 smart cities, what would the rest of cities remain? Would they remain ignored, or something might good happen to them? Because if you are just building 100 smart cities, you can't just ignore the whole of India. And what would they remain dumb cities or like?
Yeah.
Or
you have to start somewhere. So if you have a certain budget, and you always start with a certain budget to set an example as well, you have to start, let's say, with 100 cities. Then that sets a good example, and that sets your standard that you were talking of. So I think that is a good idea to start with whatever standard it is. Same with the European Commission as well. We set the climate rise to 2.2 degrees. 2.2 degrees, and it's been lowered because everyone said you can't adjust to it. So I think if you put your bar higher and everyone tries to get onto that, then that's a good thing. Even if you weren't to achieve getting the whole of India into a green city and leaving the rest in the dump city, I think eventually, and it is a slow process, eventually it will catch on. And if you look at India for the last 50 years even, what an extreme change it has made, I think that can only be projected even for a faster process for the future to be of good progress, I would say.
Yeah, but
especially with the global global pressure on climate change or general environmental concern. Yeah.
But I also think that it's important so that you have the 100 cities, which are going to get a lot of investment. But then I think it's also important to, with that investment, to make sure you empower the people that live within the cities and make them feel a part of the change, because otherwise you're going to alienate people, and maybe perhaps even more so in the cities that don't get any attention.
Yeah.
So I think giving people the skills and the know-how and the money available from a public perspective, and giving businesses and institutions the ability to develop their own cities is more important, actually, because then people feel more in part of their own city. Because otherwise these landscapes will just change so irreconcilably, and then people won't actually be able to understand the change and might fight against it in some way, perhaps.
Just like you were saying that people might feel alienated. Have you heard of the term ghost towns? It's happened in Masdar city.
Yeah.
Because they are called ghost towns because no one comes there, and they were touted to be the upcoming smart cities, and $18 billion were pumped in Masdar city, and no one came there. It was backed up by politicians and real estate companies, and it's similar case happened in China. So what's your take on that? That can we make a ghost town in India also? It may probably happen, considering the governments we have.
I mean, I think that the Indian government is more decentralised than the Chinese government. The Chinese government put these in place with the future in mind, in terms of part of their long-term communist plan. I think that the people have a lot more power and a lot more influence in India's country, and governmentally and institutionally. And so I think that I don't think they would particularly become ghost towns as they would in China. Obviously, there is a potential for that to happen. But I don't think they should be built. But the thing is, you have a huge housing shortage in India. So many walking around as we walk around, there are so many people living on the streets or living in houses that are not fit, by our standards at least, for people to live in. And so I think that what is better, is it better for people to live on the streets of a city they love, or is it better for them to live in a house in a state that they may not have any emotional attachment to, but where they're safe and they have clean water and sanitation? I think I would always vote for that, in my opinion.
And one last question. Considering the past governments we have had so far in India, 100 seems to be a very easy promise to make. And in India, government's duration is 5 years. After that, elections happen again. And if you take just 5 years, so it's like building 20 cities per year to meet the final 100 target. So don't you think that's very high and unrealistic or utopian idea? Okay, we'll build 20 cities in a year, because most of the countries we look around the world, they don't probably make 20 cities in a year. So that's a very breakneck speed of development or unrealistic target. So do you feel the India government has probably gone wrong? Because when you look at 100 number, the cost will be so amazingly high that there will be private players involved.
Yeah.
And they will definitely do it for profit, and the governments will do it for politics. So that's a very corrupt combination of any development we can look in any part of the world. What's your take on that?
I think there are two things at play there, really. There's an interest of the government to gain votes.
Okay.
And then when a government promises something within a certain amount of time, then that gathers people, it gathers momentum in terms of votes, which is, happens in our country still. Apparently we have the best, most flourishing democracy in the world, but we still have broken promises on a yearly basis from our politicians. I don't think that's not new, and that's probably not going to change.
Okay.
And the other side of it is that there is obviously a need for cities and for development in India. So. And so maybe perhaps if they do set the bar as high as they have, and it is unrealistic, and if they don't quite reach it, then at least it's some kind of progress, and at least they can look back on it and then evaluate it, and at least I would hope they would do. But maybe it is unrealistically high, but maybe you have the second largest population in the world in India, so maybe perhaps the fact that other countries don't build 20 cities a year isn't the true reflection, because you have so many cities in India and so many people to build the cities. And I think it's all a question of will as well, obviously. In China there are, I don't know the statistics, but I imagine there are many, many cities built every single year in China. And because they have the political will, and because they have a centralised government, and when something happens, it happens, and they say that. So perhaps there'll be a resistance to change more so in India. I'm not sure.
What's your opinion about Hauskas village? You have been probably the first time there?
First time, we've been here for 10 minutes. Yeah.
And any opinion you have formed so far of this place?
It's very very Western.
Okay.
It's nice for us. It's a nice change.
Okay.
Because we've been in India for a while now, but
Car still managed to sneak onto the pedestrian-only zones.
Okay.
but it seems very pleasant. I mean, it's interesting to see the cultural adaptation. That's, I suppose, is a consequence of this rapid change that's happening in India at the moment, because I mean, this park could be in city centre London, in Hackney or Islington, in a very hipster, progressive district of the city, when in fact we're in actually a very, very conservative country. So it's interesting to see that development as well, which is a different side of India.
Okay. Thanks a lot for your valuable contribution to this documentary.
Thank you. Namaste.
Okay. And hope you have a nice day, and hope you find India a very interesting place to travel. Have a nice day.
Thank you.